guys, it's Lauren from Girly Knits, and today I have a new tutorial showing you all the techniques used to make a new design that I just came out with, these adorable knitted shorts. I make them on my LK150, which is a mid-gauge knitting machine, and in this demo I'm going to be showing knitting the size 2 in the pattern, which is equivalent to a size small. If you'd like to get your own size, I have a pattern available with 11 sizes ranging to fit a 24 to 44 inch waist and 34 to 54 inch hips. And while the pattern includes tons of photos of like up close so you can see all the techniques I'm using, I'm also making this video so just in case you want to see me do it live in action, you can follow this video as well and follow along while you're making the pattern. So in this tutorial today, we're going to be covering how to cast on and do this fold over knitted hem. You can also do a picot hem, which I will show you, and then we're going to knit one leg at a time. So I'll be showing you one of the legs and then the other leg is basically the reverse of what I'll be showing you. We're going to bind up for the crotch, and then there's going to be a series of decreases along the front and the back, and then when we get up here there's going to be a series of short rows so that the back is a little bit higher, and then we're going to knit our waistband, and I'll show you how to add these eyelets, so you can add in a drawstring if you wish. And then I'm going to show you how to fold and join the waistband on the machine. So these shorts are made 100% on the machine, and then all you'll have to do is seam them up when you finish. There are some other options. For example, if you don't want a drawstring, you can skip the eyelets like I did in these. The techniques that I'm showing you today are the same techniques that I used in a pants pattern or leggings, whatever you want to call them, that I'm wearing right here. So it's the same exact technique. The only difference with the pants is that you start at the cuff and then you do a series of increases up to the crotch, but from there on the shorts and the pants are knitted the same. So you can use this tutorial for either the shorts or the pants, and hopefully I cover everything you need to make you feel comfortable learning all these new techniques and making these designs. In this tutorial, I will be using Lion Brand's Touch of Alpaca, which is a lovely fuzzy yarn that comes in these beautiful heather colors. I'm using the blush color. This is a worsted weight yarn, which is the yarn called for in the pattern, and the gauge we're working with is 4.75 stitches per inch and 6.75 rows per inch. So as long as you get that gauge, you're good to go, and any worsted weight yarn should work. I've made this design in many different worsted weight yarns at a tension of T 5.5, and that gets the gauge, but if you need to adjust the gauge, I will share with you how you can adjust your gauge as well. If you would like to get the pattern for these shorts or these pants, you can find them on Ravelry, where I'm Girly Knits. You can also find them at girlyknits.com, or you can find the links below this video. So all you need to do is thread up your waist yarn and your main yarn, and we can get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is cast on for our size 2, which has 47 stitches on the right and the left. So I'm going to start at 47 over here, and then just go all the way down, selecting every other needle to cast on our waist yarn. Okay, and we're going to have a tension of 4.5, which is one dial down from our main tension, just for the bottom band of the shorts. So we're just gonna slide this across, and then we can hang our weight. And then we can go ahead and fill in the remaining needles so all are selected. And just make sure we have 47 on the left and 47 on the right, and then we are ready to just knit about 9 to 10 rows of waistband. For the last row, I'm going to use ravel cord, which will make it easier to take out our waist yarn once we do that. Thread in my ravel cord, just take that across. Alright, so now we're ready to start knitting the bottom band. So I'm going to join up my main yarn. We're going to start with the right leg, and for that we're going to leave 23 inches, and this is so we can use it to seam up our shorts later. So just gonna get 23 inches there, and then we also want to reset our counter to 0, and we're ready to start. So we're just going to thread that in, leaving that tail, and if you're making a plain hem, you just want to knit to row 20. But since I'm going to show you a picot hem, on row 9 we're going to create some eyelets, which I will show you. So I'm just going to knit up to row 9. So we're at row 9, and basically we're going to take every other needle and transfer it over one stitch to the right. And we're going to skip the very first 2 and last 2 needles just so it makes it easier to seam later. So I'm going to start at the 4th needle and then transfer that over just so that these 2 are left untouched. And then now we're just going to do every other needle. We're just going to do that all the way to the end of the row. So now we're just reaching that last eyelet. We're just going to leave those last 2 unworked. And then, all right, so now we're just ready to continue knitting, and we'll knit to row 20. All right, so now I've reached row 20. And we are ready to fold and join our bottom band. I'm just gonna remove everything. As you can see, that eyelet row just created these little holes here, and then we fold it, it will look like a picot, which looks super cute. Okay, so to pick up our hem, we're gonna grab our 3-prong transfer tool. We are going to start with the very first 3 stitches here. Just grab those 3. And then hang them on the first 3 needles. And then we're just going to continue along hanging this entire hem. So now we've reached the end of picking up our row, and as you'll notice, there will be one less stitch at the end, so we'll just leave that last needle empty. And then you just want to push that hem back to prepare for joining. And just for the joining row, we're going to change the tension to 1 dial above the main tension. So we're going to put it up to 6.5, and the hem will just look a little nicer having this looser tension to join it. So we're going to work across this row. And then you just want to make sure that all the stitches are joined. That looks good. And then from here on, the inseam length is really up to you. So that's something that you'll want to decide. I would recommend measuring a pair of shorts you have to see what inseam that you would like. This bottom band is going to add about 1¼ inches, so round it to the nearest odd number because we want to now knit so that our carriage is on the right hand side of our knitting. In the pattern there's some recommendations for how many rows to knit, but of course you can do your own depending on how long you want them. And also, before you continue, you'll want to change to your main tension, which is 5.5, which I actually forgot to do, and I had to undo my rows, so don't do what I did. From now on, we're working with our main tension of T5.5. So I've changed to that, and then I can also hang my weights now, and then we'll knit 3 rows. All right, so I have just finished my inseam, and now I'm ready to bind off for the crotch. I'm just gonna leave the waist yarn here for the moment. I like to wait a little longer before I take it out. But as you can see, this cute little picot hem has formed here, so that looks good. And we're just gonna reset our counter back to 0. So to bind off, we're going to remove our yarn from the carriage. So we're just gonna take it out, and then we are going to grab our 1-prong transfer tool, and we're gonna take that last stitch, we're gonna transfer it over 1 needle, and then we're gonna take our yarn and place it in the latch. I don't know that it matters if you go this way or that way, just I would just stay consistent. So I'm going to go, counterclockwise, and then we're just gonna pull the yarn through, and that is 1 stitch bound off. So for this size, I'm binding off 3 at the right side, and this is going to totally depend on which size you're making and the pattern, but that was one stitch found off, so now I'm going to do 2. And then the last one. Okay, so after we've bound off those stitches, you just want to make sure that you've maintained a loose tension there, and then you want to take those bound off stitches out of work so they don't get knitted. And then now we can rethread our yarn into the carriage, and now we're ready to knit. So we're just going to knit across this row. And now we're ready to bind off on our left side. And so for this size, it's going to be different for each size. I'm binding off 4 on the left side, so we're just going to do that the same. So in this case, we have that very last stitch, going to the next one. And then this time I'm going to put my yarn clockwise, but again, I don't think it totally matters. These stitches are actually going to be hidden when we seam the shorts together, so it's not a huge deal what they look like. Okay, so now I've just bound off 4 stitches on that side, and now we can put our yarn back in the feeder, and we are going to knit 1 row. So now for the next row, we are going to use our 2-prong transfer tool, and we're going to bind off 1 stitch at each side. And then we're going to knit this row and the next row. And then we're going to repeat that decrease that we did on our even row 3 more times. So after knitting those last 2 rows 3 more times, we're on row 10. And just to double check our stitch count, I have 79 stitches. So I just want to make sure that's right. So I have 40 on this side and 39 on this side. So yes, that adds up. So because I'm making the right leg, the right side is going to be the back of my shorts, and then the left side is the front of my shorts, and it's going to be opposite for the other side. For this right leg, our front shaping is done, so we basically bound off for the crotch and did a series of decreases, and that's it for the front, whereas the back we're going to have a series of more decreases. So for the size 2, we're going to continue to knit and decrease on rows 10, 14, 18, 22, 28, 34, and 40. And we're just doing the same 2-prong decrease. So that's pretty straightforward, and I will catch up with you after I've finished all those decreases. Alright, so I've just finished my last decrease on row 40, and the pattern is telling me to knit to row 44, so I'm just going to do 3 more rows. And now I'm at row 44. So as you can see, we have this pant leg forming, and we can just take out our waist yarn now and our ravel cord. So you can see our hem, see that it looks good. Awesome. All right, so now we've reached the top of our shorts, and we're ready to do some short rows. So to do our short rows, we are going to change both of our Russell levers to 1, and that means that any needles that we now have in D position will not be knit. We're basically going to create a wedge so that we're not going to knit at the front, but we'll be knitting at the back, and we're just going to gradually over 12 rows create this like long triangle, as you'll see. So for the size 2, we're going to select the last 9 needles on the left edge, and we're going to pull them out to D position. then we're just going to knit across. Okay, and then now when we're on the left side, we are going to pull just one needle out. And what that's going to do is it's going to automatically wrap the needle. In some instructions, it will have you manually place the yarn under the last needle, but in this case, we're just going to pull out the number specified, and then we're going to pull out one every time we're on the left side, and that's going to automatically wrap so that there's no holes. So we're pulling that out, and then we're going across. While we're doing these short rows, we're also going to be doing 2 more decreases at the right side. So again, the pattern will say which exact rows that you will be doing additional decreases. For this size, we're decreasing again on row 46 and row 52. So I'm on row 46 right now. So before I do another short row, I'm just going to decrease here at this side. And then again, for every time we go to the left side, we're going to pull out 9 more needles. And then go across. And then 1 needle, go across. And then 9. And then 1. And then 9. And then 1. And now I see again that I'm on row 52, so I'm going to do my last decrease, the right edge, which is the back. And then that will be it for the decreases. And then so again, we're going to pull out 9. And then 1. And then 9. And then 1. All right, and then now I'm just going to check the pattern. It's going to tell me how many needles I'll have left in non-holding position, just to double check that I did all my decreases and that I did my short rows correctly. So it's telling me I should have 10 left, and that's correct. I have 10 left. And then, so we finished our short rows. So now we can move our Russell levers back to 2. And then we can just knit across, and all the stitches will be back in work. All right, so we just finished our shorts, the main part of our shorts, and now we're moving on to the waistband. So the fun thing about the waistband is that you don't even need elastic or anything. We're gonna create like an elastic knitted material just by putting the dial tension down 3 dials down, and it's just gonna create a much tighter knit, and it's gonna be very stretchy. So it's gonna be almost like an elastic, so you don't have to insert an elastic in. It will just naturally have some negative ease and fit your waist. And then of course, if you wanna add a drawstring, you can add that for extra support if you want, but you shouldn't actually need it. So that's the fun thing about machine knitting, is you can just change the tensions around and create these different fabrics so easily. So we're going to go down to a tension of 2.5. And then again, we're just gonna reset the counter. And now we're just going to knit. So the size of your waistband is totally custom. I have it at 46 rows, which gives you about a 2¼ inch long waistband. So of course you can do more or less. And then we're gonna add the eyelet for the drawstring on row 20. And if you wanna do a custom amount of rows for your waistband, or to figure out the drawstring row, you would just do half of the total less 3 rows. So in this example, there's 46 rows, 46 divided by 2 is 23, and then 3 less than that's 20. So we're gonna knit up to row 20, and then I'll show you how to do the eyelet, and then we will continue on with our waistband. Okay, so I've reached row 20, and we're gonna add that eyelet at the front, which is on our left side. Just a reminder, everything's reversed when you do the other leg, but the longer side with the short rows is the back with all the decreases, and then the one without the decreases, that's shorter in length, is the front. So we're gonna add our eyelet here, and we're just gonna do it with that 5th needle. We're just gonna pull that out to the left, and then we're just gonna transfer it over 1 stitch to the left, just basically towards the front, so that way the drawstring will hide that doubled up stitch. And then it's just kind of like when we did the picot edge, it's just gonna create an eyelet. We can just continue knitting and it will just create that little hole there. So now we're gonna knit to row 46, and then when we get there, I'll show you how to join the waistband. Okay, so we just reached row 46, and then we can actually remove our yarn. We don't need this anymore. And now what we're going to do is join the waistband. So we're going to pick up the row that's directly above the row where we joined the short rows, and you'll see a line of these wrapped stitches. So you're going to have to look pretty closely, but you will see them. So I'm just going to find that very first wrap stitch, which I see right here. It just looks a little different than the rest. And then I'm gonna follow along that row directly above that, all the way to the end. And then I'm going to pick up with my 3-prong transfer tool, those 3 top ridges right there, just picking up the one on the end and then those 3 last ones. And then I'm gonna pick it up and place it in my latches, and I'm actually going to skip the very first needle. So we'll start with the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th needles, and then you want to place it in the latches, but don't push it back. We're going to have our live stitches to the back, and then we're going to have these picked up stitches just in the latches because we're actually going to pull them through eventually, so we want to make sure that they're in the open latches. And then we're just going to go along that row and continue picking up those stitches. So it can be a little tricky, but one thing that you can do to help you is as you go, just double check when you come across those wrap stitches, just keep checking that you are picking up that row above. It should line up. And if not, you can always just pull them off and start over. It's not a big deal since these are picked up stitches and not live stitches. You can always redo it if you have to. And if you don't like doing this, I remember I didn't do this at first, but then I did find that it actually does save time, and it creates this really stretchy waistband, which I really like. But in case you don't like doing this, or your yarn is too dark and you can't see what you're doing, or for whatever reason, you could just bind off and then whip stitch your knitting to the inside and do the waistband that way. I have tried that. This creates a little bit more of a stretchier waistband, so just like you'll be sure that it will fit over your hips, and yeah, it just creates this really great join that won't be too tight. So when I get to see this wrap stitch here, I can see that the row above is right here, and just double check that I'm picking up the correct row. So just keep going, and sometimes it also helps to fold your knitting, and it makes it a little easier to see them and pick them up. All right, so we're coming to an end here, and it should work out that there will be a needle left on the left side as well. So you have one empty on either end, and that's actually just gonna make it a little easier when we're seaming as well, and it just works out that way when you pick up the stitches. So got every other needle in. We're just gonna move all the needles back to C position, and we're gonna prepare to pull them through. So if I pulled them through now, there'd be like a long distance between the worked stitch and the held stitch. So we're just gonna move them all back just to make it a little easier. So I'm gonna move those back to C position, make sure they're all still in their latches. And then now it should be really easy to work each stitch. So we're just going to take the needle, and then we're just going to pull it through. And we're just going to continue along like that for every needle. And once you get going, it's really easy. They'll just pull right through. And then after sure they're all joined, you can just move them forward slightly. So now we're gonna do a bind off on the machine called the Backstitch bind off. If this isn't something you would like to do on your machine, another option is you could remove your knitting onto a knitting needle and bind off manually. I've done that as well, and it creates just as good of a bind off. It might be slightly flatter if using the Backstitch bind off, but it's not a huge difference. And if you do that, I would recommend using a US 10.5 needle just to ensure that it's very loose, and again, it can fit over your hips when you take your shorts on and off. Also, if you do a hand knitted bind off, it's actually easier to take out if by chance you're worried that you might have to remake the shorts or like redo a certain part. The Backstitch bind off, you have to like undo it one by one with your tapestry needle. So if that's of any concern, you may wish to bind it off by hand, but I will show you how to do it on the machine. So first you want to cut your yarn. You want to leave about 3 times the width of your knitting, and then I just add a few extra inches just in case. Then we're gonna thread our tapestry needle. And then in the very first stitch, we're going to go through it from the front to back and pull it through. And then the second needle, we're gonna go from the front to back and then back to front out the first needle. And pull it through. And then again on the third needle, we're gonna go front to back, second needle, back to front, and pull it through. And then we're going to just continue doing that same gesture all through the rest of the stitches. All right, so we're nearing our end here. Just going through these last stitches. There's no special trick to ending. You just go through the front to back of last one, and then from back to front, second to last one, and then you're done. So once you've done that, you can just pull your knitting off the machine. And yay, you've bound off. So as you can see, this Backstitch bind off just creates this really stretchy bind off. Now we're ready to seam together the shorts. So I will show you how to do that. So to seam our shorts together, we're going to start with the bottom band at the inside of our shorts. We're actually gonna have them upside down. So I'm gonna take my tail, thread it with a tapestry needle, and then we're going to start at the bottom band. So we're just going to go through that very first stitch at the bottom band and just use mattress stitch. So we're going through 2 bars on the left and then 2 bars on the right. And we'll just continue that all the way around the bottom band. So as you finish the bottom band, you'll then reach the inseam. And this inseam here is pretty short. We only had 3 or 4 rows, so we'll just finish knitting that. And then after you finish your inseam, you're going to join your knitting with the other leg. So let's see, let's get this inseam done. So now that we're here, and I've already seamed the inseam on this side as well, so it's ready to join. Whichever yarn is longer, we'll use to seam up the back. So this guy is longer, so I can use this. Okay, so this one doesn't have the decreases, so that's my front. So this is going to be my back. So when they're facing each other, the right sides are facing, we're ready to seam them together. So I'm going to go through the first bound off stitch here, my tail, and then the first bound off stitch here. And then for this size I had 3, so we're just gonna go through those 3. And then once the bound off portion is joined, we're ready to do mattress stitch just up the back. So I'm going to start on this right side here. Again, just picking up 2 bars on both sides. Just do that all the way up the back and then over the waistband and to the inside of the waistband. And then we're just going to do that on both sides. And then as you can see on the back, your decreases should line up. You can see they kind of mirror each other. So it's just a good way to make sure that everything's lining up. So this looks good. So the rest is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of lining up your backs and fronts when you do your mattress stitch. And then the last thing I will show you is how to make a drawstring on your knitting machine, if that's something that you would like to do. And for this, I don't use waste yarn. It's just pretty simple and straightforward, so we don't even need it. We're just gonna thread our yarn, and then we're going to select 4 needles. And then we're going to do an E-wrap cast on. So to do an E-wrap cast on, we're going to wrap our yarn around the first needle counterclockwise. And then the same for the second needle. Same for the third needle. And then the fourth, I'm gonna transfer my carriage over. The fourth one we're not gonna wrap, we're just going to put the yarn in our carriage. Going to use a tension of 3.5, and then we're going to knit across. Then I'm going to grab my weight and just put it, since it's just a few stitches, it's pretty easy to manage, and you can just use a weight and you shouldn't have to use waste yarn. And then we have a stable cast on there. And then I'm going to flip my top lever from the triangle to the circle, which means that it's not going to knit when we go this way, which is going to create knitting an I-cord. And then we're just going to go back and forth. And then we have our I-cord. It's that simple. So you just want to go as long as you want it to be. You have a couple options. For this pair of shorts, I actually did a faux drawstring. So it's actually not going around the entire shorts. It's just threaded through these 2 eyelets here, and then I just tied it in a bow because you really don't actually, totally need a drawstring. But for the pants that I'm wearing, I did have one that goes all the way around just for fun. So it's totally up to you. The faux drawstring was about 22 to 27 inches, and then the full waist drawstring, you would just do that plus your waist measurement. And then so yeah, you just make the I cord that long, you bind off the same way I showed you to bind off when we did the crotch. And then when you finish it, you'll just take your drawstring and you'll just thread it through your eyelets, whether all the way around or just through the front. And then after that, you can weave in your ends from your E-cast on and also from your bind off, and then just tie your ends in knots, and that just ensures they won't come out of your eyelets if you put them in the wash or something like that. And then you're done. It's that easy. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I can't wait to see what you make. Thanks for joining me. If you do make these shorts or these pants, I would love to see what you made. If you do make them, please share a photo on Ravelry, or if you post it on Instagram, you can tag me at Girly Knits. I would love to see them. I had so much fun designing these and making this tutorial, so if you would like more, please let me know, and please let me know what you'd like to make. Bye!